With a clean as a whistle record on US FDA inspections, a healthy pipeline of launches coming up, and some very interesting and impressive launches done over the last 12 to 18 months. I think Lupin has come out of the pharma pack smelling like a bed of roses. The question only is, as the conversation shifts to reducing pricing pressure in the US and more, what can happen to the pharma space at large, and how would Lupin fare within that? We get in Mr. Ramesh Swaminathan. He's the Executive Director and Chief Financial Officer of the company, about the prospects for calendar year 24 and maybe beyond. Mr. Swaminathan, good having you. Thanks so much for taking the time out. I would love to understand, how do you think about the space? Because when one looks at your performance, it is not depicting what the space entirely has gone through. Sure, most generic pharma companies have done well, but you've done exceptionally well. So first, let's start with how are the industry prospects looking to you?
Firstly, thank you for having me on, and a very interesting question that you're presenting to me. So let me roll back the clock a little. Over the last few years, the industry dynamics have changed quite a bit. And if you look at, what was perhaps an El Dorado for all the companies, this is really America, it's turned out to be a bit of a famine, in recent times, more because the fact that the OSD business was actually undergoing a big, there's a lot more competition. It actually arose because of the fact that there was channel consolidation, and there's a lot more entry of a lot of manufacturers from India itself, and both actually contributed to, in fact, in some ways, a price erosion of a very different kind. And it is also the changes that were brought out by the US authorities in terms of GDUFA that actually meant expedited approvals and the like. So all of this actually meant that there was a lot more price erosion, and what was actually, as I said, a feast for quite some time turned out to be a bit of a famine. We were also impacted in some ways because of our, OAI situation across various factories and the like. And then came in COVID, which actually impacted all the companies. And there was, of course, no inspections happening at that point of time. And that's where we actually touched on nadir, so to speak. In the last few years, Lupin has been focusing on three things. One is getting our record right on the factory front with the regulators, and there, as you very correctly pointed out, we've done a fairly good job on that. There are a couple of more factories to go, but it's a question of time. The second, we actually focused a lot on getting our cost structure right, and I could talk about it at length. And third is we wanted to get our buoyancy back when it comes to the top line across various markets, and that's where we actually did a fairly good job, and the results are there to see. Speaking about, in fact, the cost front, we did a number of things. Firstly, we focused on what the businesses that we actually wanted to close down, which are not making monies for us, is essentially the specialty business in America. We also cut down on, in fact, the NCE spends, because that is not yielding the results, whilst the risk is what they are. We also looked at, in fact, a lot of inefficiencies across the system, in terms of looking at, in fact, the gross margins, worked on, in fact, alternate vendor development, looking at routes to synthesis for various molecules, looking at productivity of labor from potentially the factory end. So we rationalized a number of people out there. We rationalized people at the R&D end and so on as well. And we also added a number of people on the ground in terms of the sales force in America and other markets where we thought it was important for us to do so. And all of this actually have started yielding pretty good results. On the top line front, whilst we had a very impressive number of products that we wanted to bring to the table over time, because of the fact that we had OAI across various factories, we are not able to kind of launch it because we were not getting the approvals also. And over time, they lost their potency. But in the meantime, we had also pivoted to more complex products because the industry was kind of pivoting to that. And we have been very successful in focusing on the respiratory portfolio, and going ahead on the injectables and the like as well. And of course, in recent times, we've had pretty good launches, which brought the buoyancy back when it comes to the American market. We launched, in fact, 40% of our turnover in America today comes from the respiratory portfolio. We had albuterol. We also had, in recent times, we have had Spiriva. But much we have we bought into brands like Zopin X. We have Bravana, which we brought to the table a few quarters ago, several quarters ago. And likewise, we did the same thing across various of the markets. We actually see respiratory and injectables as being global platforms, and we would like to lever this portfolio across various markets. In Europe, for example, we have Foster, and that was first introduced to in UK, and over time we kind of the generic version was launched in various of the markets as well. So that pivoting has really helped us to kind of grow the margins, and I would think going forward things are only going to be better.
Could you explain that? I mean, one, there are two parts to my question actually. One, having a great control on the cost structure is welcome if that is accompanied by maybe reducing pricing pressure or better pricing as opposed to just price erosion, that only aids. Now, the conversation has been around mild price erosion. To your mind, because this is such a cyclical business, are we at a stage in the cycle from where we could move from a mild price erosion to maybe better pricing as well, or is it difficult to predict, especially in the US market?
So I actually addressed some parts of it in my previous answer when I spoke about the fact that there has been channel consolidation, and that obviously meant the prices were eroding. So there are other factors that I spoke about also. But things are changing a bit because a lot of companies that had got into America thinking that it's going to be an Eldorado forever, and I saw that the returns are not so much really. So to the extent they started shedding their portfolio, and a lot of biggies also started doing that because a lot of the products had turned to to inconsequential margins, so to speak. And it's not very different with Lupin. We also shed some parts of our portfolio. So much so that there was actually a shortage of products in America. Even as the date that we're speaking, it's close to about 350 odd products. It's also come forth because of the fact that a lot of companies closed down because, as you would know, inflation was prevalent across the globe, including America, and interest rates are rising. When interest rates are rising, a lot of those companies which had levered themselves from a debt perspective found it unviable to carry on business, and that meant factories were closed down. And because of all a combination of shedding a portfolio and the closing down of, in fact, supply locations, meant that prices were a lot more stable because of the supply situation itself. That's hopefully this will stay this way for some time, given the fact that it's not going to be easy for companies to kind of open up newer factories and the like as well. And people have shed their portfolio. It's not easy to come back again. But I mean, as I said, it's still early to kind of predict that, because essentially, there are more than about 150 producers of generic products applying for the American market. And for any molecule, we are looking at 20, 25, 30 players, so to speak. So even if the figure comes down by half, it's still going to be pretty intense competition. So I am, whilst I'm pretty hopeful and, I would think that this benign regime would certainly stay for some time to come. I need to take it, on a quarter-on-quarter basis. As of now, it looks like it's going to be stable, but you never know for the medium term or for that matter, the long term.